Good afternoon, or to all from London, or good morning, wherever you are. Welcome to this event hosted by IMO's GloFouling Partnerships. My name is John Alonso, and I'm lucky enough to be your host during today's session. Today, we would like to give you, the goal of today is to give you more information about the Biofouling Innovation Challenge. And this was an initiative that we launched with the World Ocean Council and the Ocean Opportunity Lab earlier this year. During the event, you will have the opportunity to hear about the main aspects of the Innovation Challenge, how to apply to the competition, and what are the benefits of participating. Additionally, today we will have some special guests to share their experience when developing a business based on an innovative idea. We will also have some panelists representing the investment community to give us some insight into how they can contribute to the development of innovation, research, technologies, and startups. As usual, we would like to make this as interactive as possible. So after the main introduction to what is the Innovation Challenge, we will have an open discussions with our guests, and you can always contribute by submitting a question through the Q&A chat. Before we start, let me give you some very basic technical recommendations. Please use the chat to communicate amongst yourselves. You can see it's a button that's on the bottom left hand of your window. You can submit questions as well using the Q&A chat. That's another window that will appear, and you can write the question and we will see it. And then what we will do is normally give you the floor to put your question live to the panelists. If you are having any problems, if you cannot listen to us, please let us know through the chat. My colleagues that are taking care of all the technical aspects of this webinar will contact you privately and try to help you solve the issue. I recommend initially, if you cannot hear us, test your speakers, as you can see here in the recommendation on the screen. And if not, sometimes it's useful to just disconnect and connect again. And many times that is the simple thing. You still have enough time before we start the full session. So after that, let me introduce first the two guests, the first two guests actually that we're going to have today. They will take on the main part of the event, of the session today, of the webinar, and they will conduct you through the other panelists. So first of all, then, hello Tina and hello Bijit. So we have Tina Liu here, who is the Chief Operating Officer at the World Ocean Council, where she leads the council's strategic development. She supervises project executions and the organization's daily operation. Prior to WOC, Tina's experience is in the shipping intelligence community with projects in global ports and maritime clusters. We also have Bijit, who is the founder and CEO of the Ocean Opportunity Lab. We will hear more about of course, about tools shortly. Bijit has a broad experience in ocean affairs and entrepreneurship. She holds or has held numerous positions in different companies and initiatives, and is a leader in the promotion of ocean solutions and women in maritime affairs. So after that, please, Tina and Bijit. I think Tina has taken the floor right now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John. I hope you guys can hear me okay. And I saw we have a little bit of a technical issue. People are saying they cannot type, and I believe our staff is on it. So hopefully you guys will be able to type your question very soon. But really, thank you everyone for joining us today. It's an honor for WOC to be here and organize this competition. So in WOC, we run a lot of different kinds of progress for a healthy, productive ocean. So like ocean restoration, CO2 removal, coastal infrastructure resilience. And this particular project on Biofouling Challenge is one of the hearts to us. The nature of the challenge, the different parties and then geographic area, whole globe being involved, it's so important. So since 2010, I think WOC has been dedicating efforts on this issue. 2010 sounds a long time ago, but compared to the challenge we're facing in biofouling is small, it's really nothing. So the biofouling challenge really affects multi-industries in many different ways. And then to a certain extent, the market force is taking care of itself in a way, engaging our business and practitioners to really tackle this issue, but it's not enough. So that's the reason why we are collaborating and organizing a competition like this to make sure, especially new small company, perhaps some of you are less familiar from the marine world, you're actually from high tech or different areas, you actually could provide with us innovative solutions that we are not so aware of. So we're aware the audience we are trying to go into are pretty broad. Some of you guys may know the topic really well, and some of you may not know the topic. So bear with us. We really want to speak to everyone. So just one quick word on the competition. We designed 3 categories. Even though for someone from the ocean think, wow, biofouling is very specific, it's great, we need those targeted efforts. But for experts in biofouling, this is a whole world there. And we run the challenge as the jury, Birgit will introduce very soon. We need to make sure we're comparing apple to apple, or to the extent we can. So we try to design everything in the 3 categories. First is anti-fouling systems, like innovative coating, et cetera, or more innovative solutions in this field. And second category is surface cleaning and maintenance. I know probably some of our guests today here is from this field. And then the third category is monitoring biofouling and measuring performance. So you may find your solution may not fit into one of them so perfectly, or you could fit into more. That's not something to worry about. It is more for us to make sure where we can put you. And then this question came out before, I just want to address it now. We're not going to disqualify you because you put you in a wrong category. It's more for us to make sure we're comparing like to like. So I want to stop here, and perhaps I can invite John back to a minute or two, give some of the guests that are less familiar with the challenge on biofouling, maybe give a word or two, just set the ground, and then we will give the floor to Bridget.
Thank you very much, Tina. Biofouling is a natural process that affects all maritime industries and infrastructure. So any surface you put into water will be affected by biofouling unless it is prevented. It's something that is nothing new. I mean, humankind has been trying to minimize biofouling from the very moment that we started to navigate the oceans. We have a very short animation that can explain it better. Oops. Sorry, we have a technical issue. We cannot hear the volume. I think, if I recall correctly, it's...
You have to give it a voice over, John.
Yes. Can't remember where that is. Excuse me. Okay. Okay, we know how to do it now. So.
Wakame is an edible seaweed, yet it's been identified among the most invasive aquatic species on our planet. In one European country, the power generation industry spends more than $10 million annually trying to stop the Australian tube worm clogging up cooling water intakes. These are just 2 examples of an insidious problem that's occurring all over the world. Invasive aquatic species introduced by biofouling. But how does it happen? When surfaces and structures are exposed to the sea, aquatic organisms, some of them invasive, can build up rapidly. Left untreated, they can have severe consequences. Once introduced, invasive aquatic species are almost impossible to eradicate, and they can pose a major threat to biodiversity and destroy healthy marine ecosystems. They can damage human health and have a negative effect on tourism. And dealing with invasive species can cost huge sums of money. A range of key maritime sectors and activities, including shipping, oil and gas, renewable ocean energy, recreational boating, deep-sea mining, aquaculture, and fisheries can be affected by biofouling and spread aquatic invasive species. And biofouling on ships can also increase hull resistance, resulting in higher fuel consumption and more greenhouse gas emissions.
Okay, so in the short animation, you've heard how biofouling is directly linked to two key environmental issues, and that is the transfer of invasive species that can threaten marine biodiversity and the integrity of ocean ecosystems, and also greenhouse gas emissions from ships, which contribute to climate change. But biofouling is truly interesting because it's not only a solvable problem, it's also because preventing and reducing the amount of biofouling will translate into noticeable benefits for the industry. So in the case of ships, reducing biofouling will improve their energy efficiency and reduce operation costs. For aquaculture, reducing biofouling contributes not only to reducing the operational costs as well, but also to improve product quality and potentially increased revenue. Another example would be, for example, ocean renewable energies, where preventive biofouling will reduce downtime periods for maintenance and increase their energy output, so increasing as well profits. So we are witnessing lately, of course, an increased focus on using our ocean resources for future economic growth, economic development. But we have to ensure that this blue economy does not translate into depleting the marine biodiversity of our oceans. So having this incentive for the development of new solutions is an excellent opportunity to solve a problem that can contribute to their sustainability. And hence this innovation challenge, we find it truly important to help us try and find exactly those solutions that are required for this issue. And I think now that's a very brief introduction to what is biofouling and why we have created this innovation challenge. And I think I can hand over to, let's see, for example, to either Tina or to Brigitte, please.
I believe it should be Brigitte if she can come back online. Here we are.
Yes, here I am. Welcome, and we are so happy to see all of you here today. So we have divided the task a bit between us, but I thought I will first give you a short introduction on some of the practicalities related to our jury partners, and also a little bit down the line how we can nominate or submit applications. So I'm just going to share my screen with all of you. Let's see here. Here we go. So this is the second event in this series leading up to our application deadline, 30th of July. And of course, we have 3 categories to apply within. We will revert back to those a little bit later. But first, we are going to announce the jury. So we have gathered a global jury representing leading experts from a number of the strongest environments, focusing on this area for a long time. We have Florida Institute of Technology represented with Jeffrey SWEN, the Bellona Foundation with Runa Skarbø, John Lewis, Nina Blöcher from Invasive Ocean, California State Land Commission with Lina Chabalos Osuna, WWF, Rev Ocean with Nina Jensen, Cawthorne Institute with Dr. Oliver Florel, and Dr. Serena Tao from the National University of Singapore. So those are the experts who will select the candidates to put forward for the pitch session at the Sustainable Oceans Summit in Barcelona mid-October. And then we have gathered, and we are still inviting and recruiting more partners on supporting partners and prize partners. So here we also have a great global collaboration, which is really the essence of what this initiative and the Innovation Challenge is about. It's uniting all of us across small and big, new and established stakeholders, and operationalizing SDG 17 to truly drive the commercial and scalable solutions out in the market to help us drive change. So here we also have a great group of representatives, and some of them are also represented as speakers today. So also just to go in before we start the question round and practicalities, our competition timeline, deadline for the application and nominations, 30th July. Anyone can nominate their candidates, and then we will help setting up the detailed registration process. We are also shortlisting a range of solutions to watch, which is a more extensive overview than those who are chosen as finalists for the pitchfest. And then, as mentioned, the pitchfest will take part with a group of finalists with the opportunity to pitch live in front of investors as part of the Sustainable Ocean Summit, followed by the Global Blue Finance Summit in October in Barcelona. We are all about collaboration, as mentioned, and I think that our experts on stage today as well truly represent this. Before we get into the discussions and Q&As, we will just take you back to how you can practically apply. So the entire competition for participants, partners, jury members, etc., is operated on toolspawn.com. So this is where you go to find information, but also to nominate or apply. And practically, you can enter through various channels, but we have a landing section for the Biofouling Innovation Challenge there, and we've also set up an overview of a global listing of innovators that we have identified so far. When you join us, you sign up on toolspawn.com, you join, you create a profile. We have a great team who will help all of you get through that process if needed. Then you can find the competition under projects. So when you access projects, you go in and you find out which opportunity within this competition that applies for you. So there are the 3 categories of the challenge itself, and then there is the option to join as industry or prize partner. When you go to the right opportunity, there is a small apply button at the top of the screen below the headline. And this apply button you can use whether you are submitting your own application or if you want to nominate an innovator. So nominate candidates and submit applications by July 30th. We are super excited to see already that we have competition participants joining from all over the world, variety of backgrounds and stages and maturity levels. So we really, really look forward to this. And let's see here. Then we get over to speakers for today. Tina, do you want to chip in and add a few words or comments before we get started introducing the speakers?
I think on the agenda, I'm assigned to introduce SOS, but shall we do that later? I just can't wait until having the discussion. And then maybe somewhere in the middle, I will explain the pitchfest, which will happen in Barcelona at the Sustainable Ocean Summit. So Birgit, please introduce our speakers.
Thank you so much, Tina. So with us today, we have some very esteemed people representing, I think, both different regions and backgrounds. We have Ted Janulis, founder and principal from Invasive Oceans. We have Julie Pirash from SWEN Capital Partners as investment director there. We have Nir Gartzman, co-founder and managing partner from the Dock in Israel. And we have 2 innovators who will share their experiences driving innovation in this very, I think, an early stage and underinvested area for many years within solutions. Tom Leffler, co-founder of Halbat, and Tor Østervold, CEO and co-founder of EcoSubsea. So I will basically stop my screen share at this point, and we are really looking forward now to start off with the innovators. Let's see. So from concept to practice, what were the biggest financial hurdles that you confronted when building your company? And there I would start with Tom, then bringing the word over to Tor. And where do you think that capital was or would have been crucial for developing your idea? So Tom, you're first up.
Yeah, well, thanks very much for the introduction. It's great to be a part of this. I think the biggest problem we faced is that many investors had never heard of biofouling, and those that were aware, often vessel owners, were not aware of the latest science. For example, how quickly biofouling develops, how much it increases emissions, and how big the problem of invasive species is. So what we found recently, and I'm very excited about this challenge for this reason, is that as more research goes into how big a problem biofouling is, the regulatory risk is starting to provide a real tailwind for this sector. And we're finding that clean tech investment is exploding, and interest in GHG reduction and the wider climate tech and clean tech space is really helping innovations like ours. So it was difficult, much harder a few years ago than I hope it will be in the next couple of years.
Thank you, Tom. Yeah, and I think definitely this is something that we have seen, that this is truly an area that has been kind of under the surface, so to speak. Tor, what would you like to add, referring from Tom's input here, starting off?
Yeah, I wanna just add that I totally agree. I remember when we started looking at this challenge, I had a professor when I was studying international shipping, and he said that, I love that you're working with Maersk, I love that it's innovation, but don't bother about the sustainability. I think that is the same that is being viewed as well by the financial world and by many of the stakeholders, that we basically have not had information about how serious it is. And it's just recently that David Attenborough stated that biodiversity collapse is the biggest single threat to the humankind. And I think therefore we are really in a hurry now to disclose what the challenges are, and not the least make concepts like this where you can gather innovators and let's start knocking on in the right hand of it.
Yeah, yes, Tina.
Yeah, Brigitte and John, sorry, I can't help. I just want to, it's going to sounds like a bit of a whinge, because we are, WC work with IMO, we are really trying to raise awareness. When we are going to the industries who is aware of the biofouling challenge, they all know about it. And then when we jump out of our small bubble, out of the circle, the general investor innovation center, they are not aware of us. It is still remain a challenge. How can we make this crucial, important issue a mainstream topic for everyone? I just want to echo what Tor and Tom said.
And I mean, it's such a big, it's a big challenge to take on, changing such a huge global area as well. And I know you have probably another comment there as well, Tom, Tor, but I was also very much curious to hear, like, what were the biggest hurdles that you found when approaching the investment community way back, and how those were overcome, and how others innovators in the earlier stages who are working on scaling their solutions now could approach these hurdles from their end?
Yeah, I think definitely that it is publicity, it is learning what the problem is, that is the starting point. And then the second point would be to start measure it, because it's like the early days of CO2. I mean, we started just doing something about it, but it's just recently now that people start to be aware of my 8 tons of CO2 emissions. And it's been emitted more the last 30 years than the following history of all times. I think we are seeing much the same challenge with biofouling, just that it's not starting to unveil. And 2 examples on that, and Tina was touching upon it, is very interesting that, for example, in large cities, we are banning pollution in the streets, down to chewing gum. But under the ocean, tons of microplastic, tons of biofouling, and many of these ports are just sent around, and that's the current solutions to how we are dealing with it. I mean, another example we've seen is we gathered of some 260 tons of species on an installation that was in Norwegian waters. It was full marine ecosystems that just a few weeks thereafter would travel to the other end of the world into scarce and non-native areas. So I think it is crucial now that we get the focus on this. And I think the way we've done it, we've just made technology and collaborated with ship owners, with port, with scientists. But I think there is still a huge gap for challenges like this to come, and to identify them. Where are the gaps for the innovator? Where are the gaps for the investors to put their money?
Tom, do you want to add any of your perspectives on this part of the burden?
Yeah, I think that for such a long time, solutions that could address the problem of biofouling in a proactive way were so far-fetched and so hard for people to imagine that the actual potential greenhouse gas reduction potential of these technologies, but also the cost savings, are actually so large that takes people by surprise. I mean, you mentioned the size of the addressable market in hull maintenance technologies and submerged structure maintenance technologies, and the amount of fuel costs that are spent due to the fouling on hulls. And the numbers are actually so large that you can fall into the category of a startup founder who is saying numbers that are a little too large for people to believe. And it's only recently that the science has been well publicized enough, and this problem has been well publicized enough, that investors are able to see that, as in all their other investments, you know, it's the size of the total addressable market, the viability of the business model, and they start to see that you've got something that could really make a difference across many industries. So it's very exciting to have this issue publicized, and it really helps innovations like ours.
And we are now in a point of time, and as I think especially now this summer is truly escalated. We now see that for over a long time, investors and the general community started caring about plastic pollution and plastic in the ocean. Then we have seen that more and more people care about and understand the criticality of the risk of full biological collapse unless we do something. And now we also see a whole different dimension of the discussions about energy consumption reductions and the reduction of CO2, as we see the huge effects on the world and the energy markets on the war where Russia have invaded Ukraine. So, I mean, you have three kind of big global, huge topics here that all resonates and taps directly into these solutions on biofouling, reducing fuel and energy consumptions, preventing the spread of toxic and microplastic particles, and also preventing the spread of these invasive species that we need to get a better control of in order to safeguard local ecosystems. So how can you truly kind of push this out to the investors? Now we have a couple of them gathered here today. So do you have any good message now to them? Because I know they have been starting to look into various of other areas, but I think this is still an early area for them. What's their optimal role? What can they do, and what can they challenge the rest of the investor community to really get on board on this collectively?
Yeah, perhaps I can start on that. I think, well, in the podium today, we are actually represented by, as I know them, some of the leading institutions within this field, SWEN and Invasive Ocean, who are actually have started looking at this a while ago and can then contribute to solving it. And I think it is by actually closing deals, by actually getting professional investment coming in and joining the innovators, that will start putting this on the agenda, and not the least provide fuel so that these solutions can go global. Because I think one of the major challenges here is that many things we can just fix them locally. But the problem with the ocean, or the positive thing about the ocean, is that it affects us all. In Australia and Norway, we're dipping our foot in the same ocean. And when then the Japanese sea vomit comes to Norway in March last year, it can very soon come to Australia next year. So I think that here it is crucial to get substantial amounts of money funded in. And I think the best way of doing it is making an example.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. And look, I really hope that a challenge like this provides a profile for organizations like ours, provides a stamp of approval from the industry and from global organizations, and can get the right corporates and the right organizations working with innovators and startups as soon as possible. We're behind the 8 ball here, and I'm extremely excited to dip my foot into a global ocean and expand from Australia. So it's great to be here.
Thank you, Tom. And we're soon gonna open the floor up fully also for the rest of the audience. I just wanted to tap a little bit more into kind of the science in this, because I mean, as you mentioned, there are big numbers. There are a lot of complex issues science-wise. How do you translate research or the scientific concepts to include them into something that is an understandable proposal for the non-specialists, such as the investment community? How can we make it understandable?
Yeah, it's a big challenge. We have a science lead in our team at Holbot who is a passionate marine biologist, and she has identified many invasive species within Sydney Harbour just in the last year that have never been found before. And we spend a lot of time trying to bridge the gap of science communication. There is so much research out there, and there's so much strong evidence about how bad this problem is. And it is a challenge that we all need to work on together to make this a simple message for people to understand. The cleaner that hulls are, the better across many different aspects. Yeah.
And Tor, you have been very active and visible and used your voice so a lot on kind of pushing this agenda for a long time. Yeah, how is this made more understandable to the non-experts?
Yeah, I think it is. If you go to, you cannot go to Australia or to the US today with a banana and not been stopped in border control because of bios.
Yeah.
But you can still drive a floating structure with 260 tons of crabs up to 8 centimeters, shells of 11 centimeters, and kelp up to 2 meters. And I think it is basically, we need to bring these stories. We need to bring these examples, because you can imagine if I came down to visit Tom in Australia and I was stopped in border control and they were asking me, what are you having in your bag? No, nothing problematic. Okay, so what is it? It's just 260 tons of Norwegian species. Can I come in because I have to visit Tom? I think I would be kicked back to Norway.
Indeed.
But we're not seeing, I think this is happening because plastic is floating on the top of the ocean. Everybody can relate to it. But this is major, and it's threatening our civilization, being pointed as one of the main vectors of biodiversity collapse. So I think it is our main task is just to bring the photos, bring the histories, and people will understand it quite.
And as a second point to that, I would say that in June of 15 of this year, the Australian government passed a rule that all incoming merchant vessels, 30,000 a year, must have a biofouling management plan in place to keep their hulls clean. But the government are starting to become aware of the problem. but they're looking for a solution. They haven't seen yet what's actually going to keep all of these very large crabs that you're talking about off these ships. How are we actually going to do it? And that's where we need the relation between the scientists, the shipping companies, the regulator, and the technologists like us to come together and have solutions for different parts of the vessel, be it the main areas and also some of the complex and harder to reach areas, and actually work together and come up with a comprehensive solution that includes the coding, that includes robotics, that includes data and analysis and monitoring, and really solve this problem at a massive scale as fast as we possibly can.
Definitely agree. And I think we saw when we started working on this challenge from Tool's side, we realized that nobody had really made a first global mapping of the solutions and innovators out there. So it would be either the actors that were often big, taking part in the big global projects and initiatives, but there wasn't really any way to find a more extensive global overview. So that's what we have focused on during this initial kind of starting point of the competition, was to figure out who are out there. How do you find you? How does the rest of the world find you? And now the next step, of course, is to also make a good overview of who are the investors out there who are interested in backing these type of solutions, who are the established actors who want to put them on their ships, who are the various stakeholders in this global ecosystem of biofouling. And we will now open up the floor for open questions. There is one more thing that I wanted to check with you, Tor and Tom, and that's, of course, financial support is part of this, but I think that you have both been leaning a lot on kind of the collaboration throughout your journeys as well. So aside from the financial support, mentoring opportunities are, of course, another option that could come out of the innovation challenge that we're looking at as a way of getting these various industry partners to contribute outside of the financial part. But in your experience, what kind of mentoring partnership would have helped you, and at what stage would it have been ideal?
Yeah, maybe I can start with that then, Tom. Well, I think there is several different mentors here, and I think the task as well is important to mention that biofouling, we are almost using a scissor to say the same problem as cutting your hair as to cutting down trees. We are very early in solutions here to this market. So I think that experts in the shipping industry, experts from the scientific industry, has a lot they can contribute to just to unveil what is the real problems and what are bagatelles that is nice to think, nice to do, but they're really not problems. The second thing I think this is, for me, that has been, I've been so honored to have fantastic mentors on a personal level and on a professional level here with EcoSubsea, and they've been invaluable in that regard. I think on the second regard, that is customers. So I think large shipping companies, not the least supply chain owners, they are actually stating through the supply chain what actions are we doing. And when it comes to biofouling, because all the stakeholders are so fragmented, very often the incentive to do something is pushed very far away and nothing happens. So I think supply chain owners, larger corporation that can take back on companies that is working on solutions here is crucial. And then I think also a final thing is NGOs and, as was pointed out earlier here, investors who do the job of digging down to this. What are the regulatory field? What are the impact here on biodiversity? It is a job, but learning up on this will actually not only be able to contribute to the environment, but I'm also certain we'll get fruitful investments in this field.
Thank you, Tor. Tom, what's your key input?
Absolutely. So I agree, customer feedback is imperative. So we focus on getting our products into the field with real customers as often as we possibly can. But the thing that we've been surprised by is how much power we get from interactions with research groups interactions with other organizations that are trying to solve similar problems and can use technology in other ways that we're developing to deal directly with cleaning hulls and inspecting hulls to solve a range of adjacent challenges in the ocean. And that generates a flywheel of relationships and network that opens a whole range of doors. So it's really fantastic to collaborate and to get in touch with as many people as possible, even early in the journey. So
thank you. We have a question here from Carl Nettleton. So if you would like to actually just activate your camera and microphone and bring it out to the stage yourself. Hey, Carl.
We're asking Carl to unmute yourself.
Hello, I'm on a walk listening to the webinar. Can you hear me?
We can hear you loud and clear, yes.
Oh, good. Sorry, I'm not going to do my camera because it won't do much good. Yes, we've worked on a concept to reduce the load of copper in cleaning technologies. So to reduce the copper that goes into the ocean from copper paints. And I don't hear anybody talking much about that in this discussion. It seems like it's been very important here in California. Is that still a concern?
Yes, for sure. And it's also embedded in the competition criteria that solutions for coating that removes toxic or hazardous materials, microplastic, etc. It's a kind of the whole span, I think. So so no metals or no components are off the scope here.
So we have a patent technology to try to address that. So that would be appropriate for the competition.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Tor, please feel free to take the word.
Thank you very much. I think it's a great observation, Carl, and I think it's very crucial because the tectonic challenge that happened with biofouling is in 2008 when TBT were not allowed to be in coatings anymore. So for thousands of years, we've had poisonous ingredients that has been working effectively on coatings. And I think this is exactly where we have to be aware that we are actually removing one of the historical solutions because of the footprint it has. And we have now to bring on board new foul release coatings, etc., without biocide, without copper, and addition, add maintenance that is not increasing the problem. Because traditionally, when, for example, doing in-water cleaning, you have had two environmental problems. You have taken off biological waste that has been hubs where you're allowed to clean. But the second is that you have spread heavy metals and microplastic in areas where it's allowed to be spread. So the work that we have done, for example, has been on capturing all this. And we're starting these days with, and that is also in collaboration with customers and stakeholders, to actually measure the amount of microplastic, measure the amount of copper, and measure the amount of biofouling is actually sitting on ship right now. So I think this is a very good point by Carl, because this is a global problem. Mainly we focus on the non-native species, but it's also a very local problem from port authority to port authority because of the chemical contamination of microplastic and copper.
And we also know that one of the partners who have joined as collaborating, supporting partner of this competition, the NGO shipbreaking platform, they are actively looking for components that can be replaced with the existing ones in paint so that ships will become more recyclable when they end of their lifespan. I do have a comment in also from Nir, who we'll hear more from later. Nir, do you want to push out your comment as well on the stage here?
Can you hear me? First of all, thank you, Birgit, and all the team. Happy to be here among these distinguished speakers and audience. I will say that from a pure private venture capital perspective, we face two challenges whenever we try to evaluate solutions for biofouling. First of all, on the higher level, when you talk to cargo owners or ship owners and operators and ask them openly, and I always love to ask open questions about their challenges, you never hear biofouling as a challenge or something they want to solve. And this is why I was so happy to hear the story that Tor mentioned about the bananas. It's really about storytelling. Storytelling is also driving later on regulators and demand by customers. You know, the IKEA and the Zara of the world, the cargo owners that push the industry for decarbonization. So they ask to decarbonize their supply chain. But when we talk with them, and we talk with decision makers on those entities, so they want to monitor the emission per kilogram of the shipment, what kind of fuel will be used, if the cars and the trucks and the trains will be electrified. I literally never heard any of them told me, I want to solve biofouling challenge. Same for ship owners and operators. They are talking about fuel savings, about fragmented and untransparent market of bunkering and diverse and many alternative fuels management they need. So they are looking for solution to better manage their bunkering operations. But to talk about biofouling, still haven't heard it enough. This is a challenge to all of us to bring it forward. And also, when there is someone visionary to talk about this, we often hear that in a world of 5 years from now, maybe we will have technology to solve the problem with anti-fouling coating that will not harm the environment. And a solution like Silverstream air lubrication that will reduce biofouling. So sometimes I hear people tell me from the industry, technology created the problem and technology will solve the problem. And then this leaves us as investors with hard time to actually back those solutions, which definitely needed. So I'm not coming here with answers. I'm coming here with questions. And the reason for me to be here is that we all think together and discuss also the challenges and how we make the ecosystem for investments in the space easier to all of us. So again, and I am as venture investor optimistic by definition, but I still wanted to raise to this distinguished panel and audience those insights.
Thank you so much, Nir. And I think also John has a comment on this one. So floor is yours, John.
Thank you, Bridget. Well, Nir, I mean, basically for the last 20, 30 years, there's been a lot of focus on the issue of invasive species, but very much focused on ballast water. That was raised as one of the main pathways for ballast water. There has been always continuous research in some areas of the world, especially Australia and New Zealand, on invasive species related to biofouling, but it's always taken a bit like, say, as a second, like the poor brother, if you want to look at it like that. But then since, let's say, start of the century, I mean, it's been clear. I mean, regulators, researchers are realizing or confirming that biofouling is responsible for at least easily 50% of the introductions. So it is. So really tackling only ballast water that's very clear for us. Is like leaving the door half open. So it's not very much use. So since then, we've seen some movement from IMO, for example. IMO published some guidelines, the IMO biofouling guidelines, back in 2011. These guidelines are voluntary, and we are aware that we conducted a survey quite a few years ago that there was limited awareness about biofouling, the biofouling guidelines and the biofouling as an issue, right? That is why there has been different initiatives, like, for example, the project that's hosting this event, GloFouling Partnerships, which is a global project. We also have as well the World Ocean Council that has been working as well for quite a number of years, and Tina may expand on that as well, on the issue of biofouling. They've been raising the issue about biofouling, or raising awareness about biofouling during the Sustainable Ocean Summits and different events where they have been attending. we have clearly we have a competition, if you want it, of environmental issues, and that is sometimes what's the main issue. Trying to get attention. I mean, right now there's a lot of focus on obviously on climate change and greenhouse gas emissions, and also now on microplastics as well. That's gathering, thankfully, as well. I mean, a lot of momentum. The invasive species issue it's biodiversity, sadly, and we've seen surveys conducted by UN and amongst even sort of investors in what kind of priorities they have when taking investment decisions. Marine biodiversity is really surprisingly very, very down at the bottom of the list of priorities. That is changing right now. We see a movement. There are now as well, what we're trying to do from IMO, from GloFouling Partnerships, is linked the issue of biofouling to all the environmental issues as where it is there. And the big importance that people is really now starting to aware that contrary to other environmental issues, the solutions for biofouling also can render, as I mentioned a bit earlier, sort of operational or increased profits, or so improvement in product, or, I mean, there is sort of something notable that pays back. It's not just investment, so trying to tax let's say, tax in a way the industry or make them responsible for improving the environmental issue and at their own cost. No, what we're trying to raise awareness is that there is sort of an investment that's required, but that will translate in sort of either reduced operation costs or increased benefits. And what we're seeing is a new market. I mean, Thor and Tom here are representatives of a new market of services and technologies that is starting. And that's, I think, quite exciting. And that's where I think the biofouling solution, the Biofouling Innovation Challenge is really coming in very well.
Definitely. And I think, of course, now one of the key focuses in this stage leading up to Sustainable Ocean Summit is, of course, to bring together the world of investors, have them come to Barcelona to meet some of really the top innovators. But I do also think there is a high potential now for them distributing and creating awareness about the full overview of the stakeholders, the innovators, investors, and then start challenging from our end, ship owners and the cargo owners to actually now come in and take part. And I just spoke with Matt Duke, the CEO of Grig, earlier now during summer holidays. And I think they're the first ship owner on board to support this challenge and find a good way of bringing value in. So I think there's huge opportunity now that we gather so many actors to also make that into a positive spiral upwards to proactively challenge in a really nice, enthusiastic way these key stakeholders.
If I may just add as well something that last comment as well for Nir as well. So the IMO countries, the IMO member states as well, right now at this moment since 2019, have approved to review these IMO biofouling guidelines, and they have already been working on it for the last 2 to 3 years. And we are going to see in the next year, actually, probably we will see now a proposal for revised guidelines, which will tackle as well certain issues that have been raised as well, and give more clarity, more information of different countries to how to tackle biofouling and help to prevent the two environmental issues that are related. And also as well, and I'm on parallel, there's work with regard to reducing the greenhouse gas emissions of shipping. And this is where it is quite important to link biofouling to as a potential, well, not a potential, it's as a real sort of short-term solution, at least, while we wait for the further development of infrastructure and alternative fuels, etc.
It should definitely be on the kind of step 1, 2, 3 short list of what you can do today. We have a couple of questions coming in before we are opening the investors part of this that I'm super excited about. Declan McAdams, you have sent us a couple of questions related to the regulators and the research bodies. Do you want to bring them in live as well?
Yes, thanks, Birgit. And actually this relates, we're Pinovo from Bergen, Norway, and we're in the area which John just mentioned, which is putting paint microplastics on the agenda. And my suggestion was, could it be possible to get some regulators and the key research institutes involved as observers in this process, given the incredibly high profile which you're succeeding in generating for this challenge? This will be a great way of putting the issues on the agenda with the regulators and with the research bodies who drive ultimately policymakers and regulators. Because I think I saw a comment in the comment section there, it needs adoption. And one of the key ways of getting adoption is signaling from regulators. It doesn't even need full action. It needs signaling that you can't do what Tor just said, or you can't dump paint microplastics in the ocean as is happening today. Thank you.
Definitely. I think, John, this is your table.
Yes, sorry, I don't like to take the floor too much, but yes, I can reply to that. Well, actually, so Declan, thank you very much for your question. It's a very good point. And this is actually happening already. What I mentioned earlier in my comment, not only with biofouling, also with microplastics. Here at IMO, for example, we have launched last year, or the year before, sorry, a new project, which is GloLitter. I think we will paste in the chat as well some links for you to get information. So yes, regulators are working already on it. We have already as well some countries that are like first movers, if you wanted, that are adopting some regulations with regard, for example, for biofouling, etc., etc. So and marine litter as well. There is an awareness by regulators. The thing is as well that must be said. So things move slowly at the international level. It's an international community, and everything has to be negotiated. But I think the momentum is really going upwards, and we can see we are going to witness quite a few decisions and solutions that are coming up very shortly.
Thank you, John, for clarifying. So Darren has also put out the question. Darren Jones, if you want to take camera and microphone and share your questions on adoption with the rest of the audience.
Darren, hello. You're muted.
And I think I'm in. Hello, everyone. Thank you for a great panel. Yeah, we talk about, when we do challenges such as this, about invention quite a lot. I genuinely believe, from my time on the GIA, the IMO, the invention's already out there. And when you go and speak to ship owners, they go, oh yeah, we'll just wait till something's invented that we can afford. Actually, there are affordable inventions out there. And it's not one invention, it's not one piece of technology, not one robotic cleaning system or one new novel coating. There are a whole selection. If they bring them together, they will save money and save our environment. And yet we're still not quite getting over that. There was a distinct change when the IMO brought the subject up at COP26. I noticed for about a 3 month period, I was speaking to boardrooms instead of engine rooms. But we've gone back again to talking to engineers who just want to talk about, you know, oh, we've dealt with biofouling for years. So how are we really going to stop this idea that we need some newfangled, never been invented Harry Potter invention to come out? Yeah. We don't. How are we going to get them to start actually putting their money where their mouth is?
I think you're really spot on here, Darren. And I think we've also found, I think we also found a good way of balancing this in the competition, because the scope of the competition for who will pitch in Barcelona will be degree of innovativeness and for a little bit more early stage candidates. But we have, if you heard me mentioning the solutions to watch, we will also put together various lists of solutions to watch that are you know, which solutions for the various parts of this full chain, the value chain, exists out there. How can they be put together, used together? What's on the market that is ready for the market? So I think that's where we can also support not only the early stage innovations, but also to help these industries and the actors that are the customers and the rest of the big players out there to understand that it's not just about future innovations. It is the combination of still a lot of new innovation to come out, but also looking at scaling and commercializing, industrializing these existing ones. So I think we have tried to tap into kind of delivering on both of these.
Great.
We can highlight, sorry, yeah. We can highlight as well, perhaps as well as we have both Tor and we just had Darren here. There is as well a great initiative from the industry itself. We have the Global Industry Alliance for Marine Biosafety, where Tor and Darren are their companies are members, and this showcases how the industry has its or key players of the industry. I mean that, like, let's say like the front runners, I would say, are quite aware of this issue and are taking the lead actually to provide solutions or provide clearance for the rest of the sector as well, to follow them, to follow their lead and try and tackle the issue.
Thank you. Then we have also another question from Maria Fernandez-Reed. Maria, are you there? Do you want to take the microphone and the stage here?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, hello, great. I'm not really good with the laptop, so I've always, sometimes got issues here. So yeah, basically I'm collaborating with a Spanish company called Titanium Technology, okay? They are nature-based solutions, and what we find here now when we are kind of looking for investors is that obviously, like, there's loads of companies who are sustainable and doing a great impact, right? But there's always like a gap between these companies and the investors, like financial markets. So many investors are willing to invest, in companies following ESG reporting, right? But sometimes what happens with these reports is that you don't really actually get the impact, the environmental or economic or the beneficial impact of these companies, right? So now at the moment we see that, like this kind of, there's like a new financial products who are interested in investing in these nature-based solutions, because these companies can actually, create an impact, okay, more specific, rather than through ESG reportings. So this company, being like a nature-based solution, is actually looking into all these things, and we are. So basically, my question is, how is the investor community interested in this concept, rather than maybe a sustainable company or a company following ESG reporting, shall we say, also about the impact of being a nature-based solution and with all that follows, right? And so I don't know if the investor or the stakeholder community is ready for showing, to make this as a product for the financial investment community, right? So have I been clear?
Yes, and I think that's a great segue over to now getting the investors in more actively in the discussion. And I know that we have both Julie from SWEN and Ted from Investable Oceans are among the partners, together with two of the 1,000 Ocean startups that just launched a new tool at the UN conference in Lisbon. But I don't know if Julie, Ted, or Nir would like to take the word and reflect on this question from Maria.
I can take it. Thanks. So yeah, it's there's two things there. So there is ESG and impact, which is really quite different, and you're completely right. From few years now, most of the funds are doing ESG because there are some rules about it, or they have value. But regarding the impact, it's much more complicated, because you can't do greenwashing at all, because you really need to take measure. And this part, and especially when it's come to biodiversity, it's really difficult. So you need to deep dive to really understand what are you able to measure, how you are able to measure, if it's possible at the moment with the science already on the market. And this is quite challenging. We at Blue Ocean, it's clearly one of our major subject, biodiversity, and how to be able to have objective KPIs on it. It's always challenging, and it's something that we need to put in place with the company. And so the investors really need to understand the issues and how does it works, and also understand the complexity of all the value chain of shipping, ports, because it brings many stakeholders. And earlier, Neil mentioned that many of the ship owners don't know about biofouling, and it's also the case for many of ports. So they don't. It's not a subject they don't understand. They just dry dock every 5 years, and they don't even know that it's really an issue, except from some sport, and it starts to change. So it's imply a lot of investment when you are in impact funds, because you have, of course, the financial criteria, but you need to go further and deeper and be able to bring all the ecosystem, to have experts to help you on that, and also be able to say, we don't know, we want to try, and we will put all the tools in place to go forward. But it's like new area, so we all trying to measure the impact and so on, but sometimes we need to be able to say we don't know, but we're working on it.
Thank you so much, Julie. Ted or Neil, do you want to also bring in some of your perspectives here?
Yeah, right. And first of all, thanks so much for having me, Birgit and team. And this has been, I've learned a ton already, so that's why I love hanging out with you all. Just on the impact versus ESG, one thing to keep in mind is that investors are not a homogeneous group. They come in all shapes and sizes and flavors, and they might be a corporate who's looking to joint venture or co-invest. It might be an individual, high net worth individual. It might be a fund of the kind that we just heard about with Julie. When you think about impact and ESG, on earlier stage companies, it's easier to talk about impact. So if an investor is talking to Tor, for instance, he might say, so greenhouse gas emissions, how do you look at that? How do you measure it? How do you represent it? If when for biofouling, like how does that work? How do you look at the metrics, et cetera? So for emerging companies and earlier stage companies, impact is you can really do it because they're pretty defined missions that these companies have. Now, take Tor's company and put it inside a multinational conglomerate and say, what's the impact on that company? It's a little harder now because that company might do lots of things. And that's a lot of the tricky part about evaluating the oceans is that it's so dispersed. The blue economy and the ocean economy more broadly are so dispersed with so many ocean operators that by the time you get to the bigger companies, then you start talking more about ESG. Because you say, what are these measurements that can be applied across 10,000 public companies globally? That doesn't mean that the science isn't the same all the way through. It doesn't mean that the principles aren't the same all the way through, but it does sort of give you a sense that the investors who are in the early stage companies do really focus on impact. And I think even the ones who are very market oriented and market based in terms of their goals and their constituents and their own mission, those people still want to see real impact, and the more measurable it is, and that's one of the advantages that we actually have in this space, is you can look at shipping or removal of these things or cost efficiencies, and you can say, this is demonstrable impact and it's measurable and it's contained within a company where it really is material to the company.
And I mean, yeah, this is an area where you can measure. It's much easier to measure here than in many other cases. But then, how do you make it personal, near? How do you envision that you make this issue of biofouling personal for you and the likes of you and the rest of the investor ecosystem here, linking into to Maria's question again?
So in this respect, I'm a big believer in public-private partnership. This is the way to drive those kinds of innovation. If we look about the price drop, for example, of renewable energy and specifically solar panels in the last 10 years that brought many solar systems into a reasonable market price was by heavily and with a lot of criticism sometimes from different countries and the people to subsidize this from the government, to drive early forces by the private investors alone, it's very, very hard. I believe that on any given moment, we have on our table investment opportunities that are showing more reasonable, fast, and also with positive impact, many of them financial return. And we have our obligation, we have our challenges to raise all the time new capital for this sector. In places where there is a public-private partnership, for example, one of our portfolio companies, in parallel to our private funding, raised matching funding from the EU R&D fund to do digitalization of all the waterways in Europe. Huge budget, not so huge, but 14 million euros for a consortium with dozen companies, they're dealing with it. So this is make the investments also more reasonable from a financial point of view, because we get non-diluting financial backing, dollar to the dollar, from entity that's making the investment in this platform more reasonable. And there is a company that maybe without this investment was maybe lose the race compare other company with more easy financial return model. So it's the way maybe from flag state, or maybe from local regulators, or maybe from subsidies of specific governments, even though the ocean is one ocean for all of us, it should be from maybe the EU, maybe some funds from specific states that will be the lighthouse for the future to say, hey, we will back those solutions. If you showcase that you will bring private investors that will trust your technology and products, we will back them dollar to the dollar with our grants to make it more financially reasonable. And this is coming back to our duty to make this story visible and well-known worldwide among the general public and regulators.
And I mean, that's when you can kind of prepare for a more kind of global agreements, etc., by getting in place these kind of green test beds, really, maybe linked to the existing ECAs that we have around the world, where there's some regions that have really proven themselves to be very progressive on testing out, trying, adapting new technologies, and supporting the innovators. I wanted to draw into now the next part also towards the pitchfest, and in your experience, how can the event, such like this competition innovation challenge and then the pitchfest as the finals, assist the further developments, both of the ideas, the combating the bottlenecks, research, and supporting the startups? How would you look at that, Ted?
Yeah, well, I think one of the wonderful advantages you have in the construction that you're doing and the partners that you brought in is that you're really dealing with the whole ecosystem, as opposed to one slice of it, the finance, the marketing. And you know, if you think about the ways that companies can get help, there's sort of the general company growth things, like what is the experience of your team, and how do you look at financials, and how do you operate, and how can you scale, those sorts of things. But then there's a lot of industry specific things where you really need SMEs, you really need subject matter experts, you really need people that you can connect with, you really need access to corporate partners. So I think the beauty of this competition is it has both. It's got experienced people who can say, you know what, I made that mistake 5 times before, let me tell you, and you might listen or not, but at least you hear it. But then you also have the people who are active in the industry who could lead to partnerships or joint ventures or demonstrations. And I think that's the power of this particular setup. So it's very exciting.
Thank you, Ted. And we will soon hear more from Tina Liu from World Ocean Council about the pitchfest and the outcome. But I wanted also to hear now the Dock is on board, Investable Oceans are on board, and SWEN. Julie, how is it also through your global networks within the hubs, accelerators, the investment community? How can you and the the other investors that are now active help driving momentum and focus and really bring the world of investors into the Sustainable Oceans Summit this year and help supporting these innovators on their really critical journey.
Yeah, I think that it's a real opportunity to have this ecosystem and be able to talk to many stakeholders about these issues. And I think that initiative like the one the one 1000 Ocean Startup made in Lisbon to present a framework of KPI can help and can bring together the investors, because we know investor we use most of us but like Ted explained, there is many type of investors, but we like to have frame and be able to see where we are going, and also to reassure our LPs or investor, because most of the time it's not only us. So I think that adding a framework around impact, around biofouling, and see where we are going, it's going to help investors to take risk, to be reassured, and also to see and the fact that some industrial are starting to create GV participating to pitch hub and stuff like this. It's also a positive sign for investors to start to massively invest in this sector.
Thank you, Julie. Nir, what will it take for you guys to really get on board and bring this into to your initiatives that you're building up these days?
First of all, I want to say something very positive and optimistic. Very large portion of our LPs, corporate partners, private for-profit companies demand us today to present in any quarterly report the SDG goals, implication and reference to every investment that we do. This is a first. And the same thing that I tell here about public-private partnership, we tell back to our corporate partners, okay, you push us for ESG, for SDG goals, let's make it profitable. Show us the money. Tell us that you will be the early adopters of those technology, even if the ROI will be 5 or 10 years down the road, not 3 years. And now when global travel is coming back and we meet more and more in person with those decision makers, I hope that things will evolve. Definitely there is additional budget into these corporates that are going into from corporate social responsibility to ESG consideration, that they say, hey, if this is covering some of our obligations in this respect, we can be the co-financials supporters within those corporates to those platforms. So there is also a very optimistic trend that we see. And actually we are looking forward to see more and more innovators like the one here and like the one to be exposed during the challenge that will compete on those innovation. On a personal level, I definitely think that if you look now on the portfolio of the Dock, which is transparent, by design, by intention, I will be loved to see more strong ESG and SDG supportive technologies that will be backed. But again, everybody and us as private investors have our obligation and challenges to bring more and more money for this segment from global investors. And we try the best and to be part of those initiatives like this one to make it happen, talk about it.
Thank you so much, Nir. And I mean, towards the Sustainable Ocean Summit this year, you have new initiatives and you have quite a bit of news out, Tina, from World Ocean Council. We really aim to bring the world of the best investors to Barcelona in October. And can you elaborate more on what's to be expected? What are the plans ahead? What can the innovators and participants expect? And what can our supporting partners and the investors themselves expect when we meet up in Barcelona?
Totally. I just so energized by our virtual discussion. I can just imagine when we all meet up personally for ocean events, what kind of energy and what kind of results can be generated from there. And before I go to SOS, I just want to say there's the ongoing myth. The project is forever looking for money. There's not enough investment. And on the same story happened on the other side. They're the investors trying to find the best project, and there's so much money and they don't know where to spend. Why is like this? I guess this is just our world. We just have to make the connection happen. So here in IMO and GloFouling projects, there is the ecosystem built around the Biofouling challenge. We have the EIA initiatives. We have so many friends here, not on the panel, but listening in. And we have TOO, the platform matching innovator with investors and the general ecosystem. And for WOC, we have been having this annual conference. It wasn't, now it has become annual, called Sustainable Ocean Summit. It's a physical gathering of high-level global CEOs and senior ocean industry and investor representatives. I think some of you have been to SOS, I believe. John mentioned, I came from shipping as my background. The very first time I went to SOS, I ditched all the shipping sessions. I knew them inside out. I went to all the other sessions that blow my mind off. The ocean is such a complex and complicated place. There's so much challenges we're facing. At the same time, there's so many great opportunities. So for 2 years, we didn't have physical SOS because of COVID. And the last one was in 2019 in Paris. And we had a very successful investor session. So this year onwards, we have decided we're actually going to have a dedicated investment conference. But for this year, it's back to back. So both of them are happening in Barcelona from 17th, 18th of October. We have sent news announcements, but we will be opening registration very soon, probably later this week or beginning of next week. So I'm just going to pop in the address here. A lot of you guys are on WC's ecosystem, so you get our newsletter. In case you are not, if you do want to come, and this is the place you can sign up. So for the normal SOS, we cover anything ocean related, ocean climate, smart ocean, smart industry, like ocean data, research technology, marine pollution, and of course, biofouling is one of the key topics we cover since the first SOS, if I remember correctly. So in this, we will have a dedicated session for biofouling. And on top of that, we will have a pitchfest. And because we already have an ecosystem exist, so we will have investors there. In addition of the jury, Brigitte already mentioned, we will not select just one winner. It's very difficult, especially if you are a startup. We will have a short list and a short list of young startups, and also solutions to watch for those more mature solutions. And all of this, we would like to provide you with some market access. So far, we don't have a cash price for this. That's not how we designed. So joining the competition, and you will be featured online, and you will also have the opportunity to really come in person to Barcelona and meet everyone. And I really take notes to my heart for these comments. John mentioned it very nicely, but also the regulators as an observer could also really help us to facilitate a healthy ecosystem, to push the market move towards giving those new solutions a place for exist sooner than otherwise. So maybe this is something we can make sure to invite to the SOS, especially for this session as well. So I think this is all on my mind. If there are any questions on Sustainable Ocean Summit and Blue Finance, leave question in the notes or write to us. But we really, as Bridget said, we have a lot of great application coming in already. And we have 1 more week to go. We really hope to see more and see some of you in person in Barcelona.
For sure. And as we are now rounding up the last kind of the last candidates and nominations coming in, also within the month of August, where the jury will be doing their expert work, we will continue the work from World Ocean Council and the Ocean Opportunity Lab on driving in more of the attention from ship owners, cargo owners, ports, and the big stakeholders that we want to recruit in for the long-term commitment to support these innovators. So we're really looking forward to this. While the competition has a finals in Barcelona, I think this is just the beginning of a strong collaborative work across various stakeholders. So, John, do you want to round off before we let the participants and speakers get back to their summer days?
Of course, I won't hold you back. I think we've been already an hour and a half, but it's been, I think time has gone very fast. I mean, first of all, thank you to all our guests and the attendees, of course, for taking part in this event. I hope you found the event and the discussion today as enlightening as I have. I mean, I've seen the numbers of attendees and they have remained constant for the whole hour and a half. So that is a very good indicator. I think there have been some great takeaway points. I mean, we all agree that raising awareness about the environmental issues related to biofouling, it is very important, and especially about the cost of their impacts. The importance of storytelling. I think we had a great story, had a great example from Tor. There is also, I mean, this is really entirely linked to research, to making research understandable, as understandable information for a non-specialist audience. I think we heard as well about the importance of having mentors to help startups along the way from concept to business. I think if I remember correctly, both Tom and Tor mentioned this. Nir mentioned as well about the importance of public-private partnerships to support and give confidence to the investment community. The investment community, of course, needs to be aware and have some degree of confidence in getting a return to their capital. So that's a key aspect that we must never forget when putting forward our proposals. It was great to hear about the interest in the relationship between investment and SDGs. That is great news because, as I mentioned, there were earlier reports some years ago that they were not very linked. And that's it, I think, unless you would like to add anything. I would say from my side, a big thank you to Tina Liu, to Birgit Liden, and the respective teams as well for putting together this event and giving this great overview for the Innovation Challenge, and great for having this initiative. This is all for now. That's it. I can close it then. Just to remind you as well that we have as well another event. If you're further interested in biofouling, there's an event, an R&D forum and exhibition on biofouling prevention and management happening in October in London, at IMO headquarters. That is like totally focused on biofouling for all maritime industries. I think we will have the link posted in our chat, and looking forward to see you there. Thank you very much to all.